I was born in Detroit, Michigan, in the United States, to a family of Irish Americans, very good Catholics. And as a result, when I was 13 years old, I left home to join a religious community. Today they call themselves friars, but at that time they were monks. So I consider myself a former monk. And I was in that life for about 13 years. And my aim was to become a Catholic priest. And part of that training, when I left the college years to study philosophy, I went with my classmates to Our Lady of Benburb Priory in County Tyrone. So I was 19 when I first went to Ireland. And I stayed there for 2 years to study philosophy, which was taught entirely in Latin. Latin with a slight Irish tilt to it, or lilt, I guess you'd say. And that was kind of a challenge for a 19-year-old. But I got to know Ireland quite well because I traveled. I made every excuse I could to travel and meet people all over in the Republic and in the North. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. And it was so much like going home. One of the things that struck me was how much the people I met were like my family, as though the passage of a few generations, a couple of generations, really didn't make that much difference. The Irish part of the family was so intense that in my upbringing, so that coming to Ireland was like coming home too. And so one day when I left, I went back to the United States. And one day I woke up and realized that whatever had got me into this life was no longer there. So I left. I just left it immediately and went on to try other things to see what else I could do with my life. And at first I thought I would study music because that was my main interest. But I did it for a while, but then I realized that wasn't quite enough. So I did doctoral studies in religion not as an institution or a teaching, but religion as a way of being in connection with the sacred wherever you find it, whether it's in obviously a religious context, or it might even be in music or literature or the movies. So the way I studied religion, you just looked for whatever was so deep as to be in the realm of the holy. And I loved that. And I did that. I finished there and then began to teach and studied how to become a therapist. And so in the past 25 years, I've been an author, therapist, and teacher. We're in a difficult time because we're in between a time when religion was so fixed and dogmatic and exclusive and separated into different cultures and different belief systems. I think today we're looking for a way to be spiritual. I don't like the word too much spiritual, but to keep the mystery in our lives and to really keep our depth and not to only be materialist. Not to explain everything and understand our lives through numbers and through technology and materialistic ways, but somehow to stay in touch with what is unknown and mysterious and yet full of life for us. I don't think we have the language for it yet, and I don't think we're there yet. We're still in transition. Like, let's say, if you wake up someday with a headache, your soul is in your head. It's like that's where you really sense it. A lot of times we sense soul, not always, but we often sense it where there's some discomfort. And it's like me as a therapist, people come to me when they're not comfortable. They don't come when everything is fine. They don't pay attention to the soul when everything is going fine. So in that sense, discomfort and some pain might be an indication that the soul is speaking, and you want to pay attention to it and find out what the message is, what is being said. And that's my job as a therapist, to try to help somebody hear that message. So
Yeah.
my assumption is that if we can care for our souls, if we can care for our souls, whether it's ourselves individually or our families or the nations that we live in, if we can care for the soul, a lot of problems are averted or dealt with. It can be done positively by living a more soulful life. I think a lot of difficulties go away, or they are diminished anyway. It's an alternative to looking for a problem, to seeing life as a problem that has to be fixed. I think that's the way in a materialist world, that's the way we look at it, that life is a problem and we have experts who help us solve these problems. I'd rather take a different approach, which is to see what enriches life, and especially in the deeper places. And the places where our heart is involved, like in our relationships and our families and our home. Soul is really needs home very badly. That's one thing. Home and family and work that really satisfies. So we assume that if you have some problem, like let's say some anger that's been around for a while and it erupts now and then, that the solution is not to get rid of the anger. So I don't have that mindset. I don't say, oh, how can I help this person get rid of their anger? That's not it. The question is, how can we be with that anger with deeper understanding and see what it is asking, what it would be if it is transformed by being more with it than against it. Sometimes people come to me with some emotional difficulty. One of the things I will do is just ask them to tell stories of their childhood and their growing up and their early experiences. And I'm not trying to understand them really. What I'm trying to do is discover through narrative who a person is, or we together we get closer to who that person is at a deep level, or know more about their soul in my language. So the mythology is one form of narrative that's very helpful because it's so big and deep and vast. It's not about particular people. It's about the forces in life, the powers in life that we have to deal with. Like we all have to deal with the power of something like fear, which is something now today with a virus around the world. There's a lot of fear, and we have to know how to deal with that force. And mythology tells stories about fear. It might be told in the language, let's say, of a goddess of fear or something like that. But the fact is, the story, that mythological story, tells us about these great powers that are there in our modern lives that we have to deal with. Like another one is love. Well, one of the great myths of the Dark Knight is the story of Jonah and the whale, which some people would know. It's about somebody who, this man, it's like a folk tale, a man who was chosen. He was just an ordinary guy, and he's chosen by the gods or by God to tell his people to shape up, that they're not living well, and trying to get them to live better. And he thinks it over and he says, I don't want this. I don't want this kind of a job. So he decides to try to get away from it by getting on a ship and going out into the ocean. And the sailors on the ship find out that he's running away from his own destiny, so they toss him overboard. And he ends up in the middle of a big fish. I mean, it's a great story. You can imagine making a children's book out of it because it's such a great image. And so there he is inside this fish. And it's a warm place inside the fish. There's heat. And the story talks about the heat there, how he's being heated. He's being transformed as he's in the belly of this fish. And the fish, according to tradition, is going through the ocean, going from the setting sun to the rising sun. So it's like it is a dark night. Jonah is in the night. He's in the nighttime. He's being transformed. He's being liberated from his fear and discovering his destiny and what he has to do in life. But he's doing that through that dark night, through the heat and darkness in the fish. So that's an image. That's just a story, a mythological story of what we all might experience. We all might say, I'd rather not go in the direction that life is asking me to go. And I'll see if I can get away from it. When you try to get away from it, you might get caught in something that helps your transformation. So a dark night is a time of transformation. It's a time of discovery and the discovery of who you are and what you need to do in this world. That's what a dark night is. But it's painful and confusing because you're in the darkness and you don't know where you're going. You don't know what's happening, but you are being affected and transformed. And you can't know while you're in it where you're headed, because then you wouldn't really feel the darkness. So if you can be patient in the dark night and keep your eyes open, you might find your way, at least partially, toward your destiny, toward who you are, and a kind of revelation and fulfillment of who you are.
Yeah.
I think that when you discover that certain things are shadow to you, that they are things that are very difficult or you can't identify with or are objectionable, or you're afraid of them, or you don't want to be identified with them, even though they're part of you. They may embarrass you. For some people, being angry is a shadow thing. You shouldn't be angry. They should be above that. So anger is something that you might have to deal with that way. It's not easy, though. I think very often when people talk about shadow, they take it too lightly. You can't just easily say, oh, discover what your shadow is and then integrate it, like over a weekend, integrate it into your life. This takes maybe years, maybe a lifetime for some shadow elements, a full lifetime for some of them. 1 decade after another, making a little progress with it, but you have to be patient, and it takes courage. And it's not easy to be courageous. Really, real courage is not easy. So I think it has to be seen as a really life transforming and challenging work to acknowledge and to eventually move closer to your shadow. Some people use the word embracing your shadow. To me, you'd have to be a saint to do that. You'd have to be really accomplished. I think most of us are lucky if we can move closer to the shadow throughout our lives and take it on. And that's very similar to the dark night then, because it will transform you. But you have to grant it its own real darkness. You can't take it too lightly. So the arts are much more important than we usually allow them to be. But in order for those arts to really connect to our soul and to the work of making our soul, you have to have a different orientation toward them. They have to mean a great deal to you. You have to see more deeply into them. They are not entertainments. I mean, entertainment's fine, and there is an entertainment side to the arts, but they are more than that. And they have to do with the discovery of these secrets to life that you probably don't know. We are all very ignorant of some of the very basics about how to get along in life. The arts can help us. All the arts can help us with that. But we have to take them really seriously as if they mean more than anything. And you're willing to give a great deal. You have to make a sacrifice to the arts in some way to get from them what you need. And the same would be of the dream work or the rituals that you were describing earlier that you are interested in doing in your Hedge School. So those rituals can be very useful, and being in touch with your inherited ancient rituals, which are wonderful. The Irish mythologies and the Irish rituals are incredible. They're wonderful. But it's not easy to really get to them and not keep them too light or too thin. You have to really see that they are speaking to the things that matter most to you and really take them seriously. Take them to heart, have deep conversations with people about them. And you can't just study them. They have to be, you have to know them for sure, but you have to also realize, as I do I work in Greek mythology quite a bit. And to me, that this is about life. This is life or death. These Greek figures, they are life or death. And that's where you have to get. Big challenges. They are very big challenges worldwide, and some of them for us here in this country. I feel that having worked at this for so long with individuals and thinking a lot about the culture, I feel that we are in a dark night, which means, as I said before, a time of transformation. So even though there's a great deal of fear and challenge and pain and anger involved in all of this, and then a requirement for endurance to have the patience to get through it, because it seems like it will never end, these things that come upon us. So endurance is an important virtue as we go through this. But if we can keep in mind that a dark night is a period of transformation, it gives us a little hope. I think we need hope.
We need hope.
One thing we really do need. And I've been very much influenced myself by the writings of Samuel Beckett ever since I was a young man. And what I love about Beckett's work is that he offers only the slightest sign of hope, just the slightest. And he himself would say that there's no hope in his writing. But I think he does give us a slightest hope. And that's what we need. We need to be able to be in these dark moments and with our fears, acknowledge our fears, but keep some hope as well, to understand that we are being transformed, and that as dark as it gets, it's still a period of transformation. And I think that vision can help us get through it. But it does require a great deal of intelligence and courage. Those are the two things that I keep saying we need today: intelligence and courage. It's so easy to be dumb about these things, to not really keep our intelligence alive. And it's also very difficult to find the courage to confront our fears and do what we can. Like, I think when people they don't find their courage, but they're just overcome by fear, they tend to deny what's happening. Denial is one thing that goes on. And another is resistance to doing anything. Just say giving up and wishing things were differently. That doesn't work. You can't do that in a dark night. You have to have the courage to be present to what is going on at the moment, but still have some hope.